Good morning, everyone. Morning. Right, so straight off the bat, we're trying to mix different technologies together. So I'm presenting from a Mac instead of the laptop that was there and trying to present from my phone. So what could possibly go wrong? So we're going to try and give it the best shot that we can. So just thought I'd start with a little bit about me. So this is me in pictures. My name's Vinay, as I've said, and I'm the UK Customer and Digital Experience Director at National Express. But this is really me. This is what makes me who I am. That's my beautiful wife and my amazing daughter, who's now 9-year-old. Who else has got children around that age, 9 years old? Yeah. She's the best negotiator in town, best closer in town, knows how to extract money out of me at an alarming rate. To the other side of that, that's my family. They are what drives me every single day to do what I do. I take my work seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously. I think it's important to have balance in your life, and I think it's important to remember the things that drive you. Over here, you'll see that I'm not from these parts. Originally, my heritage is from India. Therefore, I was born pretty much with a cricket bat in my hand, and it runs through my blood. It's a sport that I love. In fact, on Saturday, I was at 2020 Finals Day at Edgbaston, watching a whole day of amazing cricket. I love to travel. I wasn't really a pool person. I was somebody that liked to get out there and travel, but actually, with the hustle and bustle of working all the time, I've kind of been converted to just lounging by a pool and reading books and just watching the world go by. And finally, that's just my mug that I carry around at work. I like to do epic shit. I'm not really interested in doing boring things. What drives me is change, transformation, trying to make things better. It's been a part of my entire life, right from when I was a kid, right through my heritage. My dad was an immigrant to this country in 1967. My grandfather was an immigrant from India to Kenya, set up his own business with his brothers. They used to make handmade boots in Nairobi and Nakuru, two towns in Kenya. They used to make boots for the British Army. One of his most famous customers was Kirk Douglas, apparently. He was shooting on location there, and he made him a pair of boots in 48 hours by hand. That's quite an achievement. So all the way through, I've been dealing with change and transformation, and it's what kind of drives me. And just finally, I guess from a credibility or just interest point of view, my background is I grew up in financial services. I grew up working for Prudential, HFC Bank, which is now part of HSBC. I grew up working for Egg, which you're going to hear a little bit about in my presentation. I then went on to consult for 10 years, working with a bunch of different companies, TUI, RBS, Audi, all in the change space, all in the customer experience space. And then in about 2016, I went to National Express to speak at their conference about customer experience. And they must have liked what I said, because I started a consultative arrangement with them that was supposed to last about a month. And then they extended me, and here I am 4.5 years later, still wondering how on earth I ended up working for a coach company. But again, you'll hear a bit more about that later on as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So Hamsters and Linford Christie, why that? So as I said, I was lucky enough to be part of an amazing organisation about 20 years ago now called Egg. Egg was born out of Prudential Banking. It was the first new bank in the UK for 100 years. When Prudential Banking applied for that licence in 1996, it was the first banking licence that had been applied for in 100 years. It was a complete greenfield. It was building the bank from scratch. It wasn't an offshoot like First Direct or any of those things. It was brand new from scratch. We had a period of incubation where we were proving to the Bank of England that we were credible, that we could conduct business well. So we had all these tests going on about lending a certain amount of mortgages and taking a certain amount of savings that would help us. And I joined them when I was about 20 years old. And I remember during to talk about this footing at the deep end, during the process of training, the Bank of England and the governors came in to come and visit us, or delegates of, and then with about 2 minutes notice, we were told we were presenting to them about the stuff that we were doing in the classroom. So I think I've been in at the deep end about presenting my entire life. So anyway, so that was kind of what happened at Egg. Do any of you remember Egg? Any of you customers of Egg? Any of you claim PPI from Egg? Some people, lots of people have, and other banks as well, but let's not talk about that today. So it was a really quirky company, and it was driven by making things better for customers. It had great products. We had broke the ceiling in terms of offering market-leading rates for savings from £1 upwards, whereas other banks still had a tiered system. The same thing with mortgages, market-leading rates for mortgages, and really transforming the market around credit cards as well. So from a product's perspective, it was really different, but that's not what made it special. What made it special were a host of other things, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I know you're curious about why Linford Christie. Some of you may remember this advert.
I feel like I'm about to be electrocuted.
Relax, Mr. Christie. The polygraph is a very precise instrument. What colour is your underwear today?
Black.
Mr. Christie, have you ever tested positive for drugs?
No.
You did in Seoul in 1988.
I was acquitted. I've been totally exonerated. That was a mistake.
What do you know about a new financial organisation called Egg?
They provide tailored solutions for each customer.
Where did you put your fee for endorsing Egg?
It's in an Egg savings account.
When did you lose your virginity?
I don't think I ever had one.
Are you married?
No.
What are you doing later?
So it was really quirky, just from its marketing to the way it spoke to customers. You will have noticed that it had the created for piece on there. Every customer that opened an account had a little thing created for. It was for you on the date that you created the account, and that stayed with you as what we'd call today as a common ID throughout your journey with Egg. It was quite groundbreaking in that sense. Quirky marketing. We had Linford Christie, we had Zoe Ball, we had Adam Faith, although that one never really made it to the screens, but Zoe Ball and Linford Christie definitely did. And then the Hamster piece, as it evolved in its quirkiness, its logo changed, its identity changed, but the essence of what it was remained the same. So we had Hamster adverts. Does anyone remember the Hamster adverts? This was way before the meerkat.com stuff that's currently going on right now. We were selling these through the contact centres, all these stuffed hamsters to people like the Meerkat guys are today. It had, as I said, market-leading rates and lots of other great stuff about it. But I talked a little bit about the essence that made it different. So why did Linford Christie and the Talking Hamster help me? Well, it was really the experience at Egg where I cut my teeth on really understanding the essence of true customer experience. And this is what I really learned there. And it's kind of set the bedrock for the transformation programs and things that I've been involved with ever since then. So this is from Forrester. It's always good to have your thoughts and ideas validated, and they've pretty much put together the kind of the thought process I had in this CX pyramid. So what is this about? So at the base level, what I learned was customers are interested in, first of all and first and foremost, meeting their needs. That is I have accomplished my goal. That is the Ron Seal, you have done what you've said on the tin moment. Everybody get that? Okay. And then we start to work a little bit hard. We work a little bit hard as organisations to try and make it simple for people. So we gave customers great products and the rates that they promised. We then tried to make it easy through the application process, and back then it was early days of web, but it was very much telephone application process, so resourcing the contact centre properly, giving people systems to be able to take the applications quickly and take the customers through that process and make the opening of account process super simple. But the thing that it really did, and did really, really well, was making customers feel good about doing that. As human beings, we're quite simple people, really. We like to feel good about the things that we do. We don't like to feel remorse. We don't like to feel stress. We don't like to feel anxiety. When we are shopping and we are buying and we are doing the things we do, we like to feel good. We like to feel validated about the purchases that we make. Would you agree with that? Yeah, we like to feel good, and we like to have a positive association with the decisions we're making. So just breaking down this pyramid a little bit more, what do you think is the problem if an organisation only ever drives to do this? What happens here? So I'm driven by Ron Seal effect, just do what I said on the tin. What's the problem there? It's what, sorry? No differentiation. No differentiation. Anything else? Emotional attachment. Correct. Anything else? So with no emotional attachment and no differentiation, what kind of relationship have you got there? Transactional. And when it's transactional, what are you most likely competing on? Price. Right, so think about the supermarkets right now. Think about the sector in that sense. You start to get into a price war and you're competing on price. And there's only one way that fight's going to go. Whoever's got the deepest pockets, the best marketing plan, the best ability to cut margins and keep surviving, that's what you're driven into. Nobody really likes being in that space, because that's a space where you become irrelevant, you just become transaction. Every time a new competitor comes into your market, customers will defect because there's no loyalty, there's no emotional attachment. Make sense? Second one up, so I've now thought, okay, well, I don't just want to deliver what I said on the tin, but I want to make it easy for customers to do what they do. What's happening here? What do you think's happening there? Well, it's Monday.
You're removing friction from the process.
You're removing friction from the process. Okay, and in doing that, what are you doing to customers? What are you creating? Loyalty. You're starting to create a bit of loyalty. You're starting to create a frictionless experience. You're making it easy. You're starting to make them feel better about making the purchase. If you think about what Amazon have done. When we launched Egg in '98, I think Amazon click to purchase was like 11 steps. How many steps is it now to purchase an Amazon item? Yeah, probably 1 or 2 maximum, as my family has very cleverly discovered. And my daughter's learned to speak to Alexa and put things in my shopping basket. But it's now super easy to order that. It just becomes nice and super easy and easy. And then what happens is you start to set the benchmark for your competitors and other places that you shop from that experience. So now you're starting to create a little bit of relationship. When a competitor comes in and competes with you and you're here, what's the likelihood of a customer defecting to them? More or less. More or less than here? Less. Right, so now it's not just about price, but you're starting to make customers feel better about what they're doing. But the real opportunity and the real smart brands and the companies that really get it is to understand, actually, customer experience is around dealing with emotion. It's around dealing with emotions, it's about dealing with people's feelings. In fact, the way I describe CX is the feeling that your customers are left with after they've interacted with your business through any channel at any time. And by any channel, I don't mean just your contact center, I mean your advertising, the people that you have on your front desk, any kind of touch point they come in touch with you, that is forming their customer experience. It is about how they feel about your organization. Make sense? And the challenge with that is lots of companies don't do feelings well. Who works in a business that's emotionally intelligent and does feelings really, really well? Put your hands up. Yeah, it's few and far between. Who works in a business that's very logic-driven, spreadsheet-driven, numbers-driven? Yeah, there we go. And that's the world that most of us live in, right? And when you're dealing with teams like that and people that look through the world in that lens, it's difficult to convey that actually customer experience is about dealing with emotion. And in travel in particular, the specific emotion that we're dealing with there is stress. Travel is about stress management. It's about stress management. Just think about those poor people today who are flying in on flights from Thomas Cook or are about to go on a holiday. The stress that they must be feeling about the purchase, what's going to happen next, the lack of information. You look at anyone that's travelled with BA during the disaster they had around losing bags and all that kind of stuff. Look what happened there about the lack of information. And we have the same on our network as well. We're not perfect. Disruption happens on our network. We don't always get it right, but you can see that when the letters come in and the conversations with customers come in, it's not necessarily what you did, but it's how you did it. It's how you made them feel by the lack of action. Yeah? So, National Express. Who recognises National Express? Good, good. How many of you have ever travelled on a coach any time in your entire life? Your hands up? Right. Leave your hands up if that was probably at school or at college or something. Right, fine. How many of you have travelled on a coach in the last 2 to 3 years? Okay, surprisingly more of you. Normally what happens is, most of the audience is, yeah, travelled on a coach, yep, it was at school, yep, it was normally next to some kid that felt sick on a school journey. That's normally the vision that most people have with a smelly old coach, a grumpy driver, a grubby floor, and seats that when you're sitting on, you're kind of wondering who last sat there because your clothes are sticking to the seat. That's the vision that most people have. And when I ask people when they've travelled in the last few years, most of the audience haven't. But coach travel has changed. And that is the problem that National Express have. Coach travel is not sexy. It's not. You know, you're not selling some wonderful product to people, you're selling travel, and you're selling travel on a vehicle, and you're selling travel against a perception of an old category, you're traveling, and a memory that a customer has. So that's the problem that we had. So increasing our growth and market share was going to be driven by transforming the perception that people had of coach travel, of public transport travel, per se. Now, in London, they have done lots of great stuff around changing perception of bus travel. But outside of London, I think that still exists around what public transport is. Right, so not only that, but this study here from KPMG is quite sad reading for people that work in travel, because not only are we 7th out of 10 here, we've also gone backwards a little bit in terms of year-on-year stuff. So as a sector, travel is really suffering from a perception of customer experience. And some of that is because of the complexities of lots of different people, different flight operators, different hotel, different destinations. Some of our coach stations aren't run by us. They are run by other people. So Victoria is run by TfL. It's not ours, yet we operate lots of services out there. So there's lots of moving parts that make it really complicated. But in essence, the opportunity is to transform travel, public sector travel, and really push us up that scale. Now, we, like many organisations, have a customer value. This is our customer value. Do any of you have a customer value in your mission statement or your company vision? How many of you could rattle it off at a moment's notice? Good. And how many of you learnt about it on the first day you got here, or a recent training course, it went in your book and then it went in a drawer and then it was never looked at again? Let's be honest. Yeah, in most organisations, that's what happens. In most organisations, this is what lives on the wall. And people talk about the value and talk about we're customer-centric, and that's what I walked into when I joined 4.5 years ago. People were saying all the right things about we're customer-centric, we think about customers, but were they acting like it? And there was a light bulb moment that happened with me and my team as we were getting more and more frustrated around customer experience, because actually what was happening was people related customer experience to just what happened in the contact centre. That's where customer experience happened. Yeah, lots of people nodding it. Do you recognise that? It's what happens in the contact centre, and it's not, because we know that customer experience is about the end-to-end journey, but yet for many companies and many businesses, people tend to think that customer experience only happens in the contact centre. So we had a Eureka moment, which is actually, if you turn the problem on its head, what's really the problem here? And the problem is that me and my team were not helping people get it. We were not helping people get it. We were not communicating it in a way that made sense to people. We weren't giving people the clear line of sight between their job and the overall mission. How many of you have ever heard the story about when John F. Kennedy visited the Man on the Moon program in Florida? Have you heard that story about the janitor? Yeah. So for those of you that haven't, I'll tell it really quickly. So JFK is apparently roaming around the centre, walking around meeting staff, and he meets this janitor in the corridor who's got a massive smile on his face, full of energy, cleaning the floor, and really putting his back into the work that he's doing. And the president asked him, he said, "Oh, so what do you do? What do you do?" He said, "Oh, I'm a janitor." He said, "Okay, so what team are you part of?" He said, "I'm part of the team that is putting a man on the moon. Because if I don't do what I do well, those guys can't work properly, and then we don't achieve our mission." And he had a clear line of sight between what he did and what the overall mission was. And part of our problem is that we didn't give people outside of the contact centre and outside of the natural customer-facing teams that clear line of sight between what they do and how it impacts the mission. So first thing we did, I couldn't find a way to articulate this myself, so I borrowed a slide that I found that kind of told the story. So this is not exactly where we're at, but it describes kind of what we're doing. First of all, I employed a voice of the customer manager, because what we were doing was presenting tables of data and then leaving it to people to figure out what that data meant. What we weren't doing was producing actionable insight. So the voice of the customer role came in to turn data into actionable insight, taking the three kind of core elements of where do we listen to our customers. So we ask our customers, so every customer that travels with us gets a post-journey survey once they've travelled. We ask them through forums. We have a customer panel where we ask them about their opinion on things and how travel's going. We like to listen, so we look at the contacts that are coming into the contact centre. So we analyse call types, we analyse information that comes in to figure out what customers are actually talking about, what they're saying. And then the last one is customers tell us. So complaints is a really key thing. How many of you have a complaints team? How many of you spend more than a day a month in your complaints team? Okay, if you really want to transform customer experience, go and sit in your complaints team. Everything that you need to know about that's wrong with your business is in that complaints team. They are getting golden nuggets of information every single day that can help you to transform your experience. So that's what we put in. We put in a voice of the customer program. And then what that did was it started to socialize what was really going on. So we were able to identify actually through that analysis and start to make it clear to people. So this is an example of the program we did with the front line. We're able to tell them that actually 11 of the 14 influences of satisfaction happened around departure and travel and arrive, and 16% of complaints also happened in this space. So the conversation with the front line started to change between, you're not just there delivering customer service. You're actually part of our marketing team. You're actually part of creating brand ambassadors and creating customer advocacy. And so in order to do that, we had to give them a way of delivering service that we were really proud of. So we already had some customer service standards across the business, but they had been around for a while. So we did a revamp of what it was. What I really wanted to give people was a view of what does good look like. So we created this thing called the NX Way, put a bit of a superhero theme on it for a bit of fun, and we unleashed it into the business. We started in one team, in one station, and we just saw what would happen if we got people engaged with this, thinking that it might get a bit of traction, but it might take a little bit longer. And what we were blown away by was how people really bought into this concept and started to act in a way that was really consistent with what we're asking them to do. We used a tool called Workplace by Facebook. Anybody else use Workplace? If you don't, look it up. It's brilliant. I'm not going to spend ages talking about it, but it is like Facebook, but internally. And this started to pop up all over the organization. People recognizing other people, peer-to-peer recognition about what they were doing well, sharing stories, creating visibility for what we were doing really well. And the really interesting thing is all of the senior management team are on this platform, and they all started to comment and like and share. And what that gave people on the ground was, this is what good looks like. It was validation of we're doing the right thing. And so it started to kind of create more of a momentum, and now we've got it rolled out across all of our coach stations, into the contact centre. It's going across all of our driver network, because 80% of National Express's driver network is outsourced to third-party operators. So it's a little bit different to trying to get information and training into them, but we're starting to roll it out across that network too. So just touching on digital, we have a digital-first strategy. So how does the CX piece and digital fit together, and how did I end up with digital and customer? Really interesting question. So this is the journey that the digital team went on. So in 2016, we started our journey from divorcing ourselves from waterfall project management to starting to adopt agile product development. And in doing that, we pulled together a co-located team of one product owner, a BA, a UX designer, a tester, and the commercial team sat next to each other. And they started to develop one product, which was our mobile mobile experience, because we had a different desktop, a different mobile, and a different app experience at the time. And they started to work on that. And they started to work in using an agile methodology. And part of that was taking the business on a journey to educate the senior team that what they weren't going to get was a complete document that said, these are all our requirements, and getting the polished product at the end. But what they were going to get was an iterative way of drip feeding and developing product. And so the funny thing is that, so this team was set up here, and then in 2017, I took ownership from the commercial team of the digital team. And where that came about was I was talking to my boss, and we're having a conversation about how to shift things around. And I was just telling him about the relationship between the digital experience people have and the customer experience we were trying to drive. And it just seemed to fit better than sitting in a commercial team. So they came over to me, and funnily enough, the guy that heads it up, I was co-interviewing with the then commercial director. Little did he know, and little did I know, he was going to end up working for me. So it's funny how the world works in mysterious ways. So we started to, we put them under customer. Then what they were good at was really developing product, but what we didn't really have in that team was a customer view. And what I felt was that we were designing things still from very much a commercial perspective. We weren't really putting the customer at the centre of design. So I installed, and he's here in the room. Where are you, Gertie? Gertie was working in the contact centre on our social media team. Bright guy. I always looked out of my office, saw him lounging in his chair, looked like he wasn't doing much, but that brain was whirring away, doing really great stuff. And we had a conversation about giving him some stretch and really using more of his talent. So I took him out of the contact centre and we put him in the digital team to be the voice of the customer. And that started to transform the way that we start to develop products, because we start to bring more and more of the customer into the central part of our design. And then now we're moving into kind of embedding product ownership and implementing more in testing. So we started to develop an ethos, which was start with the customer, build with the customer, end with the customer, and really driving our development around that. Sure, all of our products have commercial leverage. They obviously have performance metrics and those things, but we're starting from the place of a customer. And the design model looks, we're putting the customer in the middle. So we start with our ideas, and our ideas come from customer feedback surveys, they come from the contact center, they come from complaints and information we get, they come from stakeholders in the business, they come from panels, but we do lots of stuff about gathering where these ideas come from. So we start to develop an idea, We put it into builds, so we do some remote user testing. Anyone else use usertesting.com? Okay, if you've not looked up usertesting.com, look them up. It's been a revelation for us. It's been brilliant. You have access to, I don't know how many worldwide, like thousands and thousands of people that sign up to test product online. You put your product in front of them. They will record a video of themselves using it, giving you some commentary, and you get great feedback back about what's working and what's not working. You can also do live interviews, and you can do all sorts of great stuff. The really brilliant thing about it, and what that guerrilla testing is you don't even have to fill your product. You can draw your product on a page and put it in front of them. We've had the team downstairs with big A2 boards with a product drawn out in Sharpies in the coach station, saying to customers, this is what we look like today, we're going to move to this, what do you think? And getting feedback about things on tickets and all that kind of stuff. So I'd encourage you to do that. Then we put it into usability testing, so we start to do our UAT. Then where we've really made some massive investment is multivariant testing. So starting to expose different versions of things to customers, test the data, find out quickly if it's working. The thing here is fail fast. Get it out there, don't strive for perfection, get it as good as you can, get it tested and validate your idea. What we're shifting the business from is moving from a model where we're going in and asking for massive CapEx investment or massive investment in a project of 200 grand or 300 grand for something, or millions of pounds for something, to actually all we want is a 20k investment to do the validation up front. Once we've built this a minimum viable product and we've validated our data, we'll come back and say, we want to roll it out, but we can base the business case on actuals instead of trying to do an educated guess. And that's been a real transformative process in our business. I'm currently rolling out Salesforce into our business, and we're doing it in that particular way too. We have rolled out changes to our website that way, and it's a constant way that we're designing. So here's an example of a product that we started. So this is our My Account that we're developing right now. So we're putting a feature on the website where customers can set up their own account and go back and see their history. We started with design version 1. We got some feedback from customers here. We moved to version 2, put it in front of them again, got more feedback. And actually where we landed was on this version here. Again, all validated by customer feedback. It will then be A/B split tested to double check with actual customers about what they think. And that's how we're doing design. And then finally, here's some other examples of some of the things we've developed and how we're using other technology like AI and chatbots and stuff. So here, this is a really interesting company that we're working with called Be Limitless. Be Limitless are a crowdsourcing customer service organization. What they do is they take your high NPS customers, your ambassadors, and they invite them to be part of their team to answer other customers' questions. So a customer will go onto here, they'll be presented with a message us or email us. They put their question in, and for general inquiries, they then get told that their query is going to be dealt with by a brand ambassador rather than an employee. The brand ambassador picks up the query on their phone, answers the question, we give them training and FAQs and knowledge database. They reply to the customer, and the customer can tell them whether it's answered their query or not. If it hasn't, it gets back routed to us. If it has, it stops there. They now take 50% of our general email volume, and their average response time is less than 5 minutes. I mean, you couldn't buy that kind of resourcing for the money that we're paying them. It's pretty incredible. It's been pretty transformative to getting customers answers quickly through a really easy mechanism. We've seen our call center volumes drop by about 10 to 15% with the evolution of this Contact Us page. We've developed a new interface for our coach tracker. So now customers, instead of having to know exactly where the coach is going from or where it's going to, they can just pop their ticket number in. It will go back, pull forward their information. They can track their services live. All of our coaches are tracked. Across the UK, we have like a mini air traffic control coach centre in the building that monitor all of our services across the UK, and the customers can get live updates of what's going on. We've also enhanced our timetable. This used to be basically a PDF. You'd go in and open the timetable and you would give in a PDF, non-interactive. We've now moved it to a more interactive one, so you can click on these and dig deeper into timetables and print yourself out a personalised timetable and that kind of thing. And this one drove about 25% reduction in traffic to the contact centre and an increase in the number of people doing self-service on their amendments by putting in a Manage My Booking feature on line 2. And so that's how we're kind of embracing digital and how we're delivering it. And when it comes to things like AI and chatbots, yeah, we're looking at all of those things. And how many of you get 1 million messages a day from people promising to transform your business through chatbots and AI? Happens, right? But we are starting to experiment with it. So we started to use RPA. So we had a chap in our commercial team whose job it was every day to look at competitive websites, scrape journeys, scrape pricing information, and figure out what was going on with our competitors. That process was then put through an RPA. We've created a little robot that does that automatically. He is now not have to do that job anymore, and we found him better work to do. Because a lot of the time, how many times do we interview bright people and give them really menial tasks to do? The way I look at AI, it's about taking away those repetitive menial tasks and really getting people back to using their brains and giving value to the organization, which we employ them to do in the first place. And that's how I see how AI fits in. So looking at RPA, we're looking at message bots on using WhatsApp, using Facebook, using Messenger. We have an Alexa skill being built and being tested right now as well. So hopefully later this year, you'll be able to ask Alexa to book your coach journey. I better not teach my daughter how to do that, because she'll be booking journeys left, right, and centre. And then the final piece I just wanted to share with you before I wrap up is that constant drive for innovation. So last year, we launched an incubator program or an accelerator lab for startups and small businesses to work with us, called Nexus, which is National Express Innovation and Science. We invite people to come and pitch to be part of that program. It's 6 months long, and we invite them to come with their ideas about how they can make our business better under customer safety, operations, commercial, whatever the heading is. And we are on cohort 2. And we have had some incredible businesses that have come to us with the most quirkiest of ideas that we would never have thought of ourselves. And we're running them through this program, and they're developing MVPs, and they're presenting it and bringing it into the business. So we've got some really nice, exciting stuff happening in the background, but it's all driven under the umbrella of trying to transform customer experience, trying to change the perception of public transport, and trying to make travel and transport cool again. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Vinay, good morning.
Good morning.
Stuart from GSK.
Hi, Stuart.
Really, really interesting talk there, and thank you very much for sharing that. One of the questions that I have is kind of moving from what the organisation was to where you are now takes a big mindset shift. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in bringing the organisation with you, in particular the leadership community, to experiment with things, being more open to failure, kind of moving from waterfall to agile? What were some of those biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, really great question. So you're absolutely right. The first sort of principle that I work on is changing technology and systems is a piece of cake. Changing people is the hardest thing that you'll ever do. Trying to take an organisation that's legacy, so it's okay if you're an Uber or a Lyft or somebody who's new, you're building the culture from the ground up. But when you're going into a business where, actually one of the interesting things about National Express is the amount of people that have been there 15, 20 plus years in that business. The value you get is lots of great knowledge and people that really love the organisation. But the converse of that is the resistance to change. Not deliberate, but it's built-in an inherent resistance to change or wanting to move at pace. So a couple of ways that we did that was you had to become brilliant at storytelling. Moving from just models of showing, I guess, logic and how things hit revenue, but actually starting to bring emotion into the room. So some of the things we started to do was to bring examples of complaints and customer feedback into the room, play calls in the room. Twice a year, we have an exec on the move program where we get our exec to go back to the front line and go and spend a day in coach stations in the contact centre on the front line. And then we have a call straight after that across the organisation with everybody at the front line where they can come back and share feedback and ask questions of the exec. And the other part of that whole shift moving from perfection to failing fast was the de-risking piece. So that bit about helping them to understand what is a minimum viable product. How is it that I can minimise the risk in terms of the gamble you're about to take? So the whole point of, actually, I can just do this for a couple of £100. I just need some Sharpies, some massive whiteboards, and I can test some stuff for you and give you some better data and validation that this is going to transform and translate itself into commercial revenue. And that really is the journey we're on. We're not completing that. There are still parts of the organisation that are still kind of in the whole, everything's got to be perfect before you launch it kind of thing, particularly when you're in a brand that has safety as one of its number one values. There's a real fear about, we've got to make sure it's safe, and it is safe, and we always make sure what we do has that value based in it. But at the same time, we're trying to educate the business so that they can test things out quickly without massive investment, reduce the risk, and then present a more compelling business case. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you. Sophie, was there a hand over your way I saw?
Hi, Vinay. Marcus Alton from Simply Health. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
On a similar sort of theme, I mean, that's obviously the cultural piece and how you work through with the C-suite in terms of the strategic direction for the business. The one question I have is probably hopefully on a lot of people's minds. We'll all go back to our business later on today or tomorrow and say, hey, we see this great presentation. We think we need to do X, Y, and Z. But there'll always be the challenge around prioritisation. I just wondered if you could give us an example of one particular hard conversation that you've had over the last 2 or 3 years that from an operational perspective has been the turning point to get where National Express are today.
Yeah, good question. Okay, I think the rollout of the NX Way was really interesting. So talking to the C-suite about, well, this is about people's behaviour and the superhero characters and all of that kind of stuff, you could see some of the scepticism in the room about how is this thing actually going to work. So I didn't ask permission, I just went and did it anyway. And I did it on a small scale, and then I came and played it back and said, look, this is what's happening. And we shared more and more and more, and actually it was just a piece of working away at the organisation, working away at some of the people in there. And now we've got complete buy-in from the organisation. I think the other thing that helped me was the MD of the UK is completely bought into this. The mandate that I've been given has really helped to be the foundation of this. You know, he brought me in because he didn't want another, as he puts it, an accountant or a big four consultant person on the board. He wanted somebody that would think differently and challenge the status quo, and I hope that's what I'm doing for him. But actually it was just about shifting from how can I seek forgiveness rather than permission, and how can I do it in a way that doesn't impact everybody at the same time, but then gives me a compelling story to unfold and tell back in the organisation. So finding a group of people in a coach station that were going to be open to this, finding a couple of people that bought into it in the management layer that would go, okay, we'll work with you on this, and then developing that story and showing how it would make a difference, and actually then showing that there is a translation to commercial. So we started to track the customer satisfaction and then play back, look what's happened to satisfaction in these stations in these particular measures that they have control over. So cleanliness, availability of staff, announcements being made. You could see that there's an uptick in there, and then we were just playing back some of the feedback from customers, and I think that was kind of what it was. I mean, at the root cause of it was just lots and lots of storytelling and perseverance, because you can, particularly when the organisation's going through a tough time, be kind of pushed into a corner about, yeah, that's all important, but we need to focus on this over here. But linking it back to the organisational priorities and just really telling the story and showing how it makes a difference, that for me is the key.
Great, thank you, Vinay, for that one. The thing I keep drawing from the things you're saying is we're here today to talk about the customer experience, and so much of the effort that's paid off is effort you've actually directed towards your colleagues.
Yeah.
By looking after them and dealing with them and ensuring they're equipped to do the best job they can. And that's so much of what I'm drawing out of you, to fix the customer experience. You're actually looking to the colleague experience. Yeah,
there's a Richard Branson quote that you may have seen, which is, it's not about the customer, it's about your people. Take care of your people first and they'll take care of your customers. And there's lots of research. That KPMG paper, which I quoted from earlier on, there was a lot of information there. Organisations like First Direct, like Nationwide, and Coventry Building Society, and Bulb, who you may know, who's a green energy provider. That whole link between employee engagement and customer experience is an emerging piece of research that's showing that the more engaged your workforce is, the more bought in they are, and the more value they feel. That translates directly back to how they deliver customer experience.
Will Sargent from And Digital.
Hi, Will.
Aware, obviously, National Express Group as a much larger entity with the B2B business and the different operations in different countries and the Spanish bus company, that kind of stuff. I guess your remit is the B2C UK space. How have you engaged some of these behaviours and approaches in the B2B space, in different countries or different cultures maybe?
Great question. So we have a group digital officer, chief digital officer who sits on the group PLC, who I work very closely with. So we run lots of shared collaboration learning sessions with the Spanish, with the Americans, with our operations in Bahrain, with our train operation in Germany. So lots of shared learning. The real drive is where you're trying something. So, for example, Salesforce has been rolled out in Spain before we got to us. So we're working with them to learn about what they're doing and how they're doing it differently, so that we learn the lessons, and when we do it over here, we kind of have that in mind. But equally, the digital team here will share what they've been doing around A/B split testing and how they've done customer validation, and share those practices with the Spanish. So from that perspective, there's a lot of global sort of sharing. We also have innovation in all of the different countries, done differently. So in Spain, it's more of a VC model. In in Chicago, it's more of a model that's linked to universities. So each country is doing it slightly differently, but we're all learning from each other about what works and what doesn't. So that kind of, I guess, the global sponsorship from the openness to want to share across country boundaries is really important, and having a chief digital officer really helps that to happen. But equally, those relationships across the organisation at a junior level. So I encourage my team to talk to their counterparts, and that shared learning is really, really, really important as well.
Fantastic. Vinay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.